There we go. Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. Donald Trump returns to the White House this week, vowing swift action on a host of issues that could impact nearly every American. He's expected to issue dozens of executive orders on his first day in office, including several that could have a profound effect on North Carolina's economy. WRAL reporter Brian Murphy has been tracking Trump's campaign promises, and he joins us now to break them down. Brian, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Trump telegraphed sweeping plans for his second tenure in office throughout his campaign. From a high level, how many changes might we see on day one?
You know, it's hard to tell, but he has vowed that he was going to act swiftly. He's not going to waste time. He probably has about 2 years. You know, transition officials have been saying he has about 2 years before he'll be considered a lame duck and we'll be moving on to the next presidential election. And so I don't think he wants to be seen as a lame duck. I think he wants to quickly start enacting some of the changes, some of the promises that he made on the campaign trail.
And immigration has been the marquee issue for Trump, everything from mass deportations to sealing the border. What does he plan, and specifically, how could those efforts affect North Carolina?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of action on the border right away. That's one area where the president doesn't really have to wait for Congress. He can do stuff through executive orders, through executive action. He's been signaling, I mean, ever since he first came down the escalator in 2015, talking about, you know, building a wall and making Mexico pay for it. This has been his top issue. And I think the results of the election have only confirmed that this is his top issue. I think we'll see a return to some of the previous Trump policies, the Remain in Mexico policy. I think we will see ramped up deportations right away, probably starting with those who have been convicted of crimes, those who can be easily caught. if you're in prison, or you can be easily rounded up and deported. I think that's where it'll start. Now, one of the concerns, I think, for people in North Carolina is that agriculture and construction are industries that rely heavily on immigrant labor. There's a source of debate whether that's legal immigrants or illegal immigrants, but I think we're going to see some impacts if the deportation program is large enough. I think we're going to see some impacts on many, many industries across North Carolina. There's chicken packaging plants, agriculture, and does the policies of the Trump administration lead to people either self-deporting or no longer trying to work? I think we could see some disruptions to that, and it kind of conflicts with another goal, which is to drive down inflation, drive down prices. If the labor force is stunted or impacted in some ways, that could lead to higher prices. So I think the Trump administration is going to walk a fine line between carrying out their promises on immigration while also trying to carry out some of their promises to bring down prices for everyday Americans.
Right. And speaking of prices, tariffs are also part of his plan to enforce immigration laws. What's he planning there, and how might that affect the state's economy?
Yeah, tariffs are interesting because unlike some of the other stuff, Trump doesn't need Congress at all to implement tariffs. The president has wide latitude to issue tariffs, put tariffs on goods coming from certain countries or on all goods across the board. Trump has talked about tariffs as, and again, this is something that he's talked about throughout his career, dating back long before he was even a politician. He's talked about using tariffs to raise money. He's talked about using tariffs as sort of a way to bully nations into doing what he wants them to do, like Mexico and Canada, helping with border enforcement. And he's talked about them as sort of an economic driver to either protect U.S. industries or keep, other industries from getting a foothold here. So the tariffs are a very important part of his policy. Where North Carolinians could see some impact is in higher prices on goods, right? If there's a tariff on goods, they may pay a bit more. But North Carolina exports a lot of products, including farm products, pork products. And as we saw during the first Trump administration, if the United States imposes tariffs on goods from certain countries, well, those countries are likely to impose tariffs on goods from the United States. And that can impact our pork producers. It can impact tobacco farmers, soybean farmers, and then, building. When it comes to building houses, to building manufacturing, if there are tariffs on Canada and Canadian lumber, that will affect the housing market. If there are tariffs on aluminum and steel, that could impact larger manufacturing. So it kind of depends on how far Trump goes and then what other countries do in retaliation.
And visas have also become a part of the immigration discussion. Any impact on the triangle there?
Yeah, well, there's, even after the election, but before inauguration, there was a fight among some in the conservative movement about H-1B visas. Obviously, there are lots of people in North Carolina that are on H-1B visas, a lot of high-tech workers. These are supposed to be for high-skilled workers that can't be filled in other ways. There's some debate about whether companies are abusing the H-1B program. Trump has said he's in favor of the H-1B program and will keep it going. But, for a long time, people have been trying to clean up the H-1B program, whether it's, from the left and from the right. Bernie Sanders has some problems with the program as well. Our companies paying these foreign workers less than they would be paying American workers. The workers that come in on H-1Bs have restricted movement from job to job. So there are complaints about the H-1B program, across the board. But Trump has indicated he wants to keep that in place. We talked about immigration as it relates to agriculture. There's also guest worker programs for agriculture as well. So how can Trump and the new administration keep legal immigration up to keep the workforce filled while also cracking down on illegal immigration? It's a fine line, and all these issues, including H-1B visas, are going to play a small role in that.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll hear how Trump policies could affect job creation in the state. Stick around. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL reporter Brian Murphy about President-elect Donald Trump's plans for his second term. Brian, Trump has also focused a lot on rolling back some of the Biden administration's efforts on clean energy. One focal point has been the Inflation Reduction Act, right?
Right. The Inflation Reduction Act passed in 2022 along party lines. There were no Republicans that voted for it. Included massive credits, massive investment in clean energy programs. And we've seen a huge impact from that bill, from that law here in North Carolina. So hardly a day goes by that we don't have some new company coming with incentives. Often these are clean energy companies, or they're producing electric vehicles, or they're in the battery and storage market. I mean, we've heard of lots of these at some of the mega sites around the state. This is one where Trump will have to get Congress to go along with either repealing the entire Inflation Reduction Act or reducing parts of it, reworking parts of it, because it passed Congress. It is the law, and the Biden administration has been rushing some of the money out to try to cement the law in place in certain areas. And so North Carolina, 22 projects have been announced since the Inflation Reduction Act passed that deal in this clean energy space. More than $19 billion in investment, more than 10,000 jobs promised from these projects. We'll see if people start to pull back. There are lots of credits in the Inflation Reduction Act. $7,500 for electric vehicles. Different levels of credits for changing electrical appliances in your house to be more energy efficient, more clean energy. If all those credits start to go away, then maybe some of that manufacturing goes away, and then maybe some of those jobs go away. On the other hand, this transition to a more green economy, clean energy economy, I think is going to happen regardless. There are some opportunities in the marketplace. We've seen bunches of electric vehicle companies sprout up. So some of this may happen regardless of the policies of the president of the United States or the administration that's in power. So it'll be interesting to see if these companies, continue with their job promises and continue to move to North Carolina, or if they begin to pull back a little bit.
Yeah, and there's a clean vehicle tax credit at the center of the state's manufacturing renaissance, but also at the consumer level. What could this mean for the uptake of electric vehicles? Yeah,
I think that's really interesting. $7,500 credit. Now, you've got to hit certain income levels, and the car has to be able to do certain things. It's not just a blanket tax credit, but how much of that has been fueling this boom? Electric vehicles in the state have gone up fivefold over the last 4 years. There really is a push for electric vehicles. I mean, if you just drive down the street, you'll see Teslas all over the place. You'll see other makes of electric vehicles, or hybrid vehicles, or plug-in vehicles. the Republican stance, and I talked to Tim Moore about this, is let the market decide that they don't need these mandates. They don't need these tax credits. If consumers want to buy electric, then they will buy electric. The counter argument from Democrats is they might buy electric, but then those cars are going to be Chinese cars or produced somewhere else. That this way, this tax credit is only for American-made electric vehicles. And so Democrats see this tax credit as a way of helping the burgeoning American electric vehicle industry, and say by getting rid of it, then you're going to be helping electric vehicle industries in other countries. This is one of the push and pulls of our political system, and we'll see who is right in the end. But the mass explosion in electric vehicle purchases and usage, again, is something. Will it slow if you get rid of this credit? Perhaps, but I don't think it's going to be shut down in any way.
Want to switch gears here. One other thing Trump has promised is to pardon people convicted for their roles in the January 6th riots at the U.S. Capitol. How many people from North Carolina could be impacted by that? Yeah,
there's over 40 people, maybe as many as 50 with North Carolina ties who have been charged. Many of them have been convicted or pleaded guilty, some to lesser charges, misdemeanor charges, some to felonies and violent charges of assault against officers. What's about a little less than 1,600 people overall across the country have been charged. About half of those were charged with lesser misdemeanors. About half were charged with felonies. And so it'll be interesting to see if Trump pardons everybody involved, or if he only pardons those who quote unquote peacefully protesting. How far into the felons, that assaulting officers does he get? Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina Republican, earlier last week discussed with Pam Bondi, who's the Attorney General nominee, that he doesn't want to see those who assaulted officers be pardoned. Those who may have entered the building, milled around for a little bit, and then left, okay. But those who took part in assaulting officers and in violence on that day. And so, again, I think some of the supporters of President Donald Trump want him to pardon everybody. Some in his party don't want to see him pardon everybody, but would like to see some people pardon. In fact, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance said, there may be some gray area between those who were peacefully protesting and those who committed violence. And so it'll be interesting to see how far Donald Trump goes in that, and how many of those people with North Carolina ties do get a pardon at this point.
Yeah, a lot to keep an eye on Inauguration Day and in the weeks and months and years after. Thank you so much, Brian. That's WRAL reporter Brian Murphy. For his coverage on how Trump's early executive orders could affect North Carolina, go to the NC Capital section of WRAL.com. I'm Grace Holland. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us a part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.